Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown. And today we're going to look at what I consider the poster boy for psychopathy. That would be Paris Bennett. Let me give you the little blurb here from Wikipedia. On February 4th, 2007, Paris Lee Bennet, a 13-year-old American boy, murdered his 4-year-old sister, Ella.Bennet, in Abilene, Texas. And I'll get into more about the murder, why he murdered her. I will get into the trajectory of the whole family, as to how he might have become a psychopath. Are psychopaths born or made, or is it a combination of both? I will get into how you can recognize a psychopath and how a psychopath thinks, a whole bunch of that. So, and just the players in this, biggest players in the story again, when I talk about everything, it's going to be Paris, his little sister, Ella, and this is his mom, Charity, their mom, but she's no longer able to be a mom to Ella because her own son killed her own daughter. It's a horrific story. And it's going to be a lot. But before I go forward, I want to do this public service announcement. This is my point of view. But there's a lot in the story about Charity forgiving her son for what he did. Doesn't mean she approves of what he did. Doesn't mean she doesn't understand that he is a psychopath, because she does. And she readily will say that. She also forgives her mother, and I'll get into who her mother is and what her mother did. She felt that she didn't forgive her mother after forgiving her son, she'd be a hypocrite. So there's a lot of, she's worked so hard to forgive. And I know a lot of people go through life working to forgive people who have done horrible things to them. And I want to talk about forgiveness. And I believe there's a type of forgiveness which I think is reasonable. And I think there's a type of forgiveness I think is unreasonable. And I want to discuss this because I think it's a big issue for people. And they feel guilty if they don't give forgiveness, but people are always telling them, you have to forgive so that you can go on with your life. It'll free you. I don't agree with that. I have a different viewpoint on that. And I want to explain what it is. Forgiveness, in my opinion, is something you give to somebody who asks for forgiveness. They've done something wrong to you or to somebody you love, whatever. They come to you and they say, look, I screwed up. I had issues. This is why I did what I did. It was wrong. And I want to apologize to you and work on my behavior, make amends, all of this. And you say, okay, I'm willing to forgive and give you a second chance. So the door, I'm not closing the door on you. So, you come to me, and I will give my forgiveness, and hope that we see now in the future, whatever this behavior was doesn't continue, and we can have a good relationship. I totally agree with that, because everybody should have the right to screw up and get a second chance if the screw up isn't so bad that you can't make any kind of amends for it, and if you don't apologize for it. So the type of forgiveness I don't agree with giving is someone like this. There are people who do horrendous things, rapists, serial killers, child pedophiles, though not a child pedophile, that would be kind of weird, just a pedophile. They do awful things, and they don't feel sorry for them because they are psychopaths. They don't feel sorry, and they do it again if they could, and they don't care if you suffer. People still say you should forgive them anyway. And people will say, I forgive. Do they really? Because in your true heart and in your brain, you know that that person doesn't deserve it at all. And you're forgiving them so you can be free. Free of what? Free of hating them? Because I'm going to say you probably still hate them. So that's just nonsense. I believe in a different thing for those kind of people. And they don't always have to be horrible people. Yeah, they can be somebody who has done you wrong. Let's say cheated on you in marriage and you end up in a bad divorce. Somebody who has stolen stuff from you and just disappeared off. Could be a parent who was highly narcissistic and messed up your life. It can be that. It doesn't have to be murder. You can do a different thing than forgiveness. You can do a thing called acceptance. What is acceptance? It's understanding that for whatever reason, that person has a mental health issue, whether it be narcissism or psychopathy or whatever it is. They are what they are. You cannot change that. Maybe they can't change themselves. So you will accept that they are what they are. Like a snake is a snake. It is. It just is. It's like saying, I forgive cancer. You don't have to forgive cancer for killing your loved one. You can just accept that cancer is a horrible disease that we haven't been able to stop, and that horrible disease killed your loved one. You accept that that is the truth, but you don't have to forgive cancer and say, well, you're just a germ, or whatever. With people, if they don't come to you, they don't ask for forgiveness, and it eats at you, the way you stop letting it eat at you is not trying to jump to this level of forgiveness, which is sometimes nearly impossible because you know that the situation hasn't been righted. Just accept that person is a psychopath. There's nothing I can do about him. He is what he is. I accept that is what he is. And then make your life as free from that person as you can, because you've accepted that it's a hopeless situation and you shut the door. Now, if you get surprised in life, let's say the person's not a psychopath. Let's say they just did you wrong and they show up 20 years later and admit that, then you can discuss forgiving when they come to you. But you can just accept, well, my ex cheated on me. That sucked. It was wrong. He's never admitted it. He's never asked for my forgiveness. He's just went on with his life. Okay, well, if that's the way it is, it's the way it is. You don't have to forgive that person. You just say, I accepted that. That's what they did and it was wrong. Accept. You don't always have to forgive. Acceptance gives you a sense of peace because you know you don't control it, and it just is what it is. So that's my little speech for today. I think it's just really important. I want to read a little something about Charity and her idea of forgiveness, because she did try to forgive them. I would say, because she forgave her son and forgave her mom, I would say maybe it's because sometimes we're not sure of ourselves. We feel guilt of some sort. Did she contribute to what he became? So therefore I should forgive him because I need to forgive myself. Am I being too harsh on my mom when she wasn't a perfect mom, but neither am I? Or if I judge other people, will they judge me? Those kind of things I think stand in our way of just accepting and feeling we have to go that extra mile and forgive. So, all right. Now, I just want to welcome everybody who is in the chat room. We have a large group here today. And that's a good one. Lucille, forgive, don't forget. I don't think you have to forgive. I think you can accept and not forget. Let's say the forgiveness thing bothers me because you don't have to. You can leave that to God to forgive that person or whatever. You don't have to do it. You can just accept, and you can be, I think, in a better place than when you try to, I think, fake forgive sometimes, because acceptance is a lot more reasonable, in my opinion. I've seen people say, I forgave the person who raped and murdered my daughter. I would be pissed at my parent if I was the one who was raped and murdered. I would say, what? How can you forgive that psychopath, that brutal? Do you know what he did to me? Do you know what I went through? How dare you? Why don't you just accept that he's a psychopath and a serial killer and accept it? But please stop forgiving him. I would be mad. So that's my thought. So Let me just say before I go on, now that I gave that speech, because we're going to go through the whole trajectory of this case and go into psychopathy in detail. It's going to be really interesting. But if you'd like to be in the chat room, my chat rooms are usually patron only. I do 2 shows a week, which are patrons in the chat room. We have a wonderful community and we get to know each other. If you'd like to do that, please click below on Patreon. It's $5 a month and it helps this educational channel. If you don't want to do that, please just subscribe, because all my videos are public once the patron only part is finished. So subscribe to the channel, click the bell, check my playlists. And by the way, I want to promote my other new channel, which is an advice channel. So there we are, Dear Profiler Pat. This is an advice channel where I profile life. I profile maybe your life, and you can send in questions to me at Dear Profiler Pat. The link is below too. And because sometimes we do need to learn to profile our own lives, not just criminals. So anyway, all right, let's get on with it. The whole story of this. And I do want to start at the very beginning. Oh, wait a minute. Before I do that, this is very important for me to do. I want to show you my sources. And a lot of times, some things like documentaries, I don't necessarily like too much. I read a book, it doesn't impress me. So I give you my review, whether you want to waste your time or not. I had 3 things I used. One is The Family I Had. It's a documentary done in 2017. I might get it wrong. And this is Piers Morgan. He interviews Bennett in prison. Fascinating. And then we have How Now Butterfly, written by Charity, which I think it was 2019. I'm just guessing on the dates. And she writes about her whole experience and what she went through and all the thoughts she had and her behaviors and trying to survive this ordeal of essentially losing 2 children. And it's a very interesting book. I loved it. I loved this. I loved this. And I loved it. This 3 out of 3. That's almost unheard of from Pat Brown. And what's interesting is I looked at the reviews on all 3 of these, and there's a lot of negative reviews. I mean, it's a real vitriol especially toward Charity. A good portion of people say she's horrible. They can't stand her. They hated her book. They thought she was a massive narcissist or even a psychopath herself. They didn't like a lot of this. They thought they didn't like Piers Morgan's interview, which I actually did. And interestingly enough, a lot of sympathy goes toward Paris Bennet. And they're like, I'm like, if you can get through Paris Bennet and have sympathy for him, I'm concerned. And mostly they're saying it's because it's her fault he turns into a psychopath. Is that true? And is it all her fault, which is what they're trying to say, that he wouldn't be where he is? And so they have this soft spot for him. They also have a soft spot for his grandmother, Charity's mom. And they're like, oh, she, whatever, she's not so bad. And I'm like, so you don't have a problem with this guy. You don't have a problem with her mom and his grandma, although she exhibits psychopathy herself, but you hate on Charity. And I think it's because a lot of people think if a woman raises 2 children and isn't a perfect person, then all the blame falls on her for what happens to those kids. And sometimes I agree with some aspects of that there is, parents do take some of the blame. But in this case, it's so egregious what people are saying. It's just really sad. Their sympathies seem to go toward the worst of the crew and not the one who she went through a lot in her life. And so I'm going to get into the whole trajectory of how we end up with Paris killing his sister. So let's start on that journey. Okay, so let's get back to our characters and my background here. All right. I will put all the links to these below. I say I liked all of them. And I want this also, all of them together have make such a great picture of everything. It's just fascinating. One of the most fascinating things is in this one, you'll see Paris Bennet talking, and he seems much kind of like, oh, you could almost think he's nice. And then he explains things and he shows humbleness and all this stuff. And then you watch him here and he's just as psycho can be, just cold, clinically explaining things, angry, nasty. I mean, like, whoa, same person. So which one do you believe? Well, you believe that both of them, both interviews are an example of the same guy who's a psychopath. So anyway, okay, on to the story. All right. I want to start at the beginning because I could just start with the crime itself, but I think this one should be done where it starts at the beginning, because you're going to see all these things that play into where he ends up being, I think, what he is, along with the fact that there's issues of whether you're born a psychopath, you're made a psychopath, or it's a combo. All right, here we go. Now, Charity, she was 6 years old. Oh, when the father, I'm sorry, in 1980, she was 6 years old. 1980, she was 6 years old. Police found the body of her father, Bobby Bennett Jr., in his home outside Atlanta, Georgia, shot several times in the back of the head. Police thought it looked like an execution. Charity's mom, Ella.Bennet. Okay, let's go to find Kyla here. And this is Kyla. This is Kyla when she was younger. And Charity says, my mom was an extremely beautiful woman. Yes, she was, for sure. She also says that she's been married 7 or 8 times, which goes to show, she says, well, there's a few actresses who beat her out, but 7 or 8 times, that's a lot. And this is Savannah, Georgia, and that's her home now. And this is Kyla, Paris's grandmother, today. Okay, so now, sorry, what's this picture? Oh, this is, she owned a trucking company at the time. She and her husband owned this trucking company, and it was called Bennett Trucking. All right, and she'll say here that because of financial reasons, everything was also owned by me. Now, I want to say that I think, Mommy Dearest, I want to call her Mommy Dearest, she seems to be very manipulative, and she says she's manipulative. By the way, that she says it right in the documentary. Well, I'm manipulative. Paris is manipulative. She's manipulative. We're all manipulative. That's just the way we are. She admits it. So when you listen to her in the documentary, you can't quite believe what she says. And as long as you don't have proof of something, you just don't know whether what she's telling you is true. And a lot of times she'll say things about Charity, which I don't know that are accurate either. It's her version, and she doesn't have a problem with being perhaps not truthful with her version. All right, so that she had this trucking company with her husband. Now, she became the prime suspect in the murder of her husband. Although the couple had been separated for some time, they remarried just 57 hours before the murder during a whirlwind trip to Las Vegas. She stood to take over the family's lucrative trucking business if anything happened to Bennett. Well, she's saying here that she always owned the trucking business. Everything was in her name. But that's not what this is saying. It is saying when she remarried him, that meant she would be in control if he died. Okay. Authorities eventually charged Ella.Bennet with hiring a hitman to kill her husband. During the course of the widely covered and sensational trial, prosecutors put on evidence that in the months before her husband's murder, Lee's mother had discussed arranging his killing with a part-time truck driver. Okay, let's look at some of the things on this. Okay, here we have, she's hired a hitman, right? According to the tape, let's see. She was angry with Bennett at the time, and somebody was talking with her. And according to the tape, Mrs. Bennett denied going further than asking about a murder contract, quote, out of curiosity, as we all do. It's like, I'm kind of tired of him. I wonder if, can you help? What about hiring a hitman? I mean, seriously, out of curiosity. That's what a psychopath would say. Then when the police arrested her, as they were driving away, this is where they said, I looked at her in the mirror. En route to headquarters, Kyla appeared to be very calm and even appeared happy at times. Interesting. And they acquitted her. They acquitted her of this murder. Now, she claims that he was involved in the Georgia mafia and drug dealing, and he did supposedly have girlfriends on the side. Okay, all of that. They were very wealthy, and there was a lot of travel involved and going different places. I don't know who ran what, but she was capable. Kyla's extremely capable woman of running that company. And also she was the type of person that when she had made a decision, she was going to take it through. Even Charity says she does that. Very strong-minded women, that's for sure. Here's an interesting, remember she said how manipulative they were, the whole family? And she says now she doesn't manipulate as much because I don't have, at the time she did this, she didn't have anybody living with her except one, I think it was the other daughter, and she's very peaceful. And I don't have a jury to manipulate. Well, what? So in other words, in the court, if you're innocent, you don't manipulate the jury. But if you're guilty, it seems like a reasonable thing to do. So Charity grew up thinking her mother did kill her father. When she went to school, she was teased about that. Your mommy killed your daddy. And she went through a lot of bullying over her mother offing her father. Now, mind you, did Kyla move out of the area so her daughter wouldn't suffer that? No, she kept on doing what she did. She admits that she pretty much was raised by nannies, that she was a busy with a business and a huge society lady, did some drugs herself, and she was pretty much not taken care of that much by Kyla herself. Kyla was a crappy mother, in other words. So, and then she loses her father, so she doesn't have a father in her life. Her mother ignores a good portion of the time, and then she has to live with the thought that her mother killed her father. I mean, this is not a healthy upbringing. Now, let's see what happened to then Charity here. By the time Lee was a teenager, she was hooked on heroin. At age, now mind you, they're rich, so that, she had money to squander. At age 17, her mother finally kicked her out. Apparently I don't know whether she ever even tried to get her into rehab. She gave me $100 and told me I could either use it to find help or to score and find a place to overdose. Thanks, Mom. Lee compromised Charity. Charity compromised, spending half on drugs and the rest on gas to go to a halfway house in Chattanooga, Tennessee. She was clean for about a year when she enrolled at the University of Tennessee. But Charity still felt the awful cravings. I was miserable. I kept thinking it should not be this hard. Charity made a deal with herself. She said if she still felt dismal in 3 months, she'd commit suicide by overdosing. About a month before her self-imposed deadline, she found out she was pregnant with Paris. Paris changed everything, she said. I mean, he saved my life. Now, mind you, she has a bad history with picking men. And when you read her book, you'll see that she admits that she's like very careless with that. She seems to pick people who have issues, maybe because she has issues. So she definitely didn't pick very good people. His father was considered schizophrenic. So the fathers weren't in these kids' lives. And even the child she had later, Phoenix, after these two were not in her life anymore to speak of, she had Phoenix, and that was also by some guy that didn't hang around. She's used to being a single mom. She's strong-minded. That's what she wanted to do. I think it was an unhealthy thing to do. I believe in a family unit. I believe, yes, there are successful single moms out there. Bless all of you and single dads. But if you can have an intact family, that's what you want to have. And that's what you should strive for always. So that's why I'm concerned about, careless sex and all that kind of stuff. You want to be with somebody you trust, and don't get pregnant with somebody you don't, and don't want as a father of your child. So she, unfortunately, didn't pick well. And so that left her children without a father in their lives. And Grandpa wasn't there either because he'd been murdered. So now she's got Paris, and she says he saved her life. And I believe her in that because it gave her something to live for. And so in the years that followed, she stayed clean. She lived briefly in Alabama, where she met Jonathan Smith, and the two had daughter Ella. The relationship fizzled out. She moved the kids to Dallas to be closer to her mother, who had just been diagnosed with breast cancer. She has a very complicated relationship with her mother. I think that I think her mother does exhibit psychopathy, and she's very manipulative, which she admits. And I think she has grown up with that, and so she herself doesn't know what to think of her mom, how to accept her mom, how not to accept her mom, or whether even to be near her mom, which she probably benefited not being near her mom, but her life was kind of messed up. So mom's rich, so it's a good place to go. Charity had been working long nights to get a concert promotion business off the ground when she relapsed on cocaine, something that deeply troubled Paris, who was then 11 years old. It was like a good 6-month period. I was back using. I know it had an impact on him. It's the one thing, the huge regret. I wish I could go back and change. Now, again, she's not a perfect mom. And she did have a drug habit before she had Paris, and she lost it for a period of time when he was 11. He ended up doing a bit of caring for his sister. And a lot of people say, well, there you go. That's why everything got screwed up, because she went back on drugs. All right, I'm going to say this. By 11 years old, you're already a psychopath. Okay? So just her going back on drugs didn't make him a psychopath. It did not. There's a lot of people who grow up in horrible drug parents on drugs and all kinds of stuff, moms and dads in and out of rehab. They don't go become murderers because they're not psychopaths. They may have issues because they have issues. So she didn't become a murderer, by the way. Her mother may have been one, and basically didn't raise her very well. But she didn't turn into a murderer, because I do not think she's a psychopath at all. I do not, although some people do. I don't. I think she's got issues, but I don't think she's a psychopath. But this guy was a psychopath long before she fell off the wagon there. So anyway, now, so she tries to move back in with Ella's father in Alabama. It doesn't work out. Shortly thereafter, she brought the kids to live at her mother's sprawling ranch in Seymour, Texas. There, things got even more chaotic for the small family. It was just like this perfect shitstorm, she recalled. Her dysfunctional relationship with her mother reached a breaking point. Meanwhile, she was still struggling to get clean. So, yeah, she and her mother had this not so great relationship. Her mother's manipulative. So, but again, if you don't have money, that's where you go. I believe there's a moment in our lives where we realize our parents are human, that they let us down and we become disappointed. At least Charity said, I believe that was Paris's moment with me. I don't think so at all. I think she does feel guilt. Some people have read her books and watched this thing, said she just takes no responsibility for anything she did. I don't find that true. I think she feels great guilt over some of the failures, and she doesn't want to admit some of her failures either. I mean, but she does admit some of them, and she thinks that this is where he said, mom's not being a good mom, and she's a mess, and that pissed him off. But it doesn't make you a psychopath, and there's other reasons to believe that he never killed Ella just because he was disappointed in Mummy. Okay, so let's get to, all right. So I want to get into his childhood a little bit later, but let me stop and talk about psychopathy. And then I'll go back to his rest of his childhood and go into whether I think her behaviors made him a psychopath, or whether he was one early on, and whether she could have done more about it. Okay, so now he's in prison. Oh, let me show you one more thing about Grandma, which is concerning. When she still, after he went to prison, she still saw him, and she said, I will always love my son. That's what she says, because she's having a hard time just disowning him, which would have been a really good idea, in my opinion. Sometimes disowning somebody who is a psychopath is the best thing you can do, because they're not what you think they are. And she is conflicted between wanting to still believe there's something good in him, and that maybe there's some explanation for why he killed his sister. And so she continues to say, when I have my children, I have unconditional love. I believe in conditional love. That's my opinion. As a mom, I've always told my kids, look, I love you, but if you turn into a serial killer, ends right there. I don't have unconditional love for a serial killer. So I differ from her on that. And she has the right to feeling that she should have unconditional love to her children. So she keeps seeing him, even though some of the stuff she writes in her book about the visitations to him are horrific. I mean, then she says, I love him, I hate him. I love him, I hate him, and some of the way he treats her is so abusive. That's why I think her unconditional love is just amusing him, and it makes his day. And he thinks she's a sucker, because that's the way he would think. You're a fool. You're just a fool. But while he's in prison for the brutal murder of his sister, Mommy Dearest, Grandmommy Dearest, I'll call her Grandmommy Dearest, she sends him, first of all, she tries to take away parental rights. She gets together with him at some point and tries to take parental rights away from Charity. Why? Because Charity actually had some rules, and Paris didn't like them. So he's buttering up his grandma, and grandma loves to beat out her own daughter, I think. And so she's like, oh, I think he's not a psychopath. Are you? Maybe she says, I'm not one either. But so she says he's not a psychopath, which clearly he is, and has been diagnosed as a psychopath by like every psychiatrist. And she's saying he's not a psychopath, and she's having this better relationship. He'd rather have a relationship with me than have a relationship with his mom. So she's playing that. She is manipulative. While he's in prison, she sends him books like this. Vampire Chronicles, books about violence and death. I look at the threes, Complete History of the Mafia, talking about murder and torture and other criminal activities. And then she points out this one she sent, let's see, raping women, murdering them. What prison allows that kind of material to go into psychopaths who murder? I think that's insane. I mean, to me, it's like our public library, which I think public libraries have gone down the toilet. I've always thought that a public library and a library, a school library, public library, and a prison library should only contain the best literature, good literature, positive literature. It shouldn't just have a whole bunch of crap in there, like anything anybody wants we'll put in there. I mean, I think that's wrong. I think they should have higher standards of picking out fine books. If you want to get crap books, you can get them off of Amazon or go to a bookstore or whatever. You can get all the crap books that you want. But a library doesn't have to provide the worst of all the books just because somebody wants them. They're supposed to reach out to the community and try to have great stuff for them to read. And so here at the prison, they're allowing books that have dark ideas in them, which he's already got massive dark ideas, and they're pushing that in the prison. That's appalling. So anyway, she was pissed off about that and wrote to the prison and said, hey, don't let my mom send him any more of this stuff, and you shouldn't have this stuff there. So she fought back, and I appreciate that for her. So now let's talk about him in prison. So here he is when he got arrested. So here he is. Here's Paris. Now he says some interesting things. I'm going to talk about how psychopathic he is, right? And that is for sure. And when you look at this one, when he's in there talking to him, whew, you will see that he is cold-blooded as all get out. But let's start with his better stuff. This is what he did in the documentary. I miss the family that I had that I tore apart. He's confessing that he tore the family apart. He is he's missing that family. And it says here, I feel guilt and remorse. Get out of here. No, you don't. He feels zero guilt or remorse. But in the documentary, you'll see him saying things that are that seem like he's maybe a little tear in his eye, or a little, and he talks about how he should be. Well, he's coming up. He wants his parole is what he wants. He wants to be paroled. He can be paroled in 2027. Scary thing, because he didn't get life in prison because he was a juvenile, which he should, because he's 13. If he had been older, I think if he's an older teen, he could have gotten charged as an adult, and he would have life in prison without parole. But because he was 13, he gets to get out, and he can get out in just a few years, 2 years. That's when his parole will come up. He has learned, one of the things they learn in prison is how to say the right things to get their parole. How to manipulate people. So he's working heavily toward getting his parole by saying he has changed and that he made a mistake when he was 13. A mistake. Dude, that's not a mistake. A mistake is I took the wrong turn. Not I took the wrong turn and murdered somebody. That's not a mistake. But he's playing down what he is like. And in the Piers Morgan interview, if you disagree with him, he doesn't act like he does in the documentary. He'll turn and say, that's because you're a fool. They're fools. So he, in the documentary, diagnoses himself as not a psychopath, but a person on, he talks about the spectrum of psychopathy, which I agree. There is a spectrum of psychopathy. I would call it a spectrum of narcissism. That you have people who are healthy. Healthy means you care about yourself, but you care about others too. So you're not a fool. You would think so, but you're not a fool. You'll take care of yourself while you take care of others, or you will consider yourself and consider others. It's a reasonable thing where you do care about others, you have empathy toward others, and but you also are not a complete doormat. Then you go toward narcissism, malignant narcissism, and then psychopathy. So up there it can get worse and worse and worse, where you end up with 100% zero empathy. You have then you have all the psychopathic traits. You simply don't care about anybody else at all, only yourself and what you can get from everybody else. He claims that he's on that spectrum, but not at the end of it. Yeah, he is. 100% poster boy for psychopathy. Everything about him is about him. He doesn't care one bit about anybody else. And when he appears to show emotion or concern for other people, it's only because he's trying to get something from them. Remember my words. To a psychopath, you're either useful or in the way. So if he thinks his mother is going to be useful to him, he will sit there and reminisce about when he's a little child and smile about things and talk about books and whatever. And she probably that gives her some level of good memory of this psycho. She wants the good memory. And we all have good memories of our kids and people before they turned out some other way. When people get divorced, I'm divorced, and I can look back at some of the days I had with my ex, and I remember the good times. And it's a nice thing to remember because the good times ended. And but I remember the good times, and it's pleasant to remember those. It took me a while to want to remember those, mind you. But I finally got to the point where I'm like, okay, again, I accept what happened, and that we're divorced. I accept that is the way it is. But now I can also look back at the good times and enjoy, the times we spent raising the family and the trips we did and all the fun things we did, going to soccer and baseball and all that stuff. I have nice memories, and I choose to keep those nice memories. I'm sure when she went to visit him, when they talked about that, that was like, get my little boy back. The boy I thought was a good boy, the boy that was funny, the boy that was loving toward his sister, the boy that we spent time together and had a good time. She wants to have that because it's been, everything else has been shredded. He shredded it. And so she liked those times. But why is he talking to her that way? Either because he's bored or because he's using that to manipulate her. Because she's useful. He preferred to be useful because she can bring him, when you're in prison, you can get certain things from family members and make your prison life nicer. And you can get her to tell the parole board if he's a changed guy, although she spoke out and said, never let him out of prison. Kudos to her. She knows he's a psychopath and she knows he's so dangerous. Don't let him out. Although he will get out. He's got, at 40, when 40 years is up, he will get out. And he will still be a danger because he'll be, I guess, how old will he be? I'm trying to think. Well, it's 13 when he did that. If he's in there to the end, I guess he'd be 50s. Still dangerous. But he uses people. So you can't believe what he says. Even his grandmother, he probably liked her more at that certain time because he could use her at the time, send him those books that he wanted because she was willing to do it. She was not. And then he thought he could, if he got rid of her, because at a certain point, the parental rights, if he just dumped her, hey, then, won't it be better if my grandmother's more of a sucker? Although I think the grandmother just liked to lord it over her. I think she knew, I don't think she knows he's a psychopath. She's just lying that he isn't. And then she wants to play this game. Now, at some point, he could easily turn on grandma too, and then want mommy back, and tell her that I was wrong, Mom, because she's not giving him enough. So that's the way a psychopath works. Now, he was diagnosed as a psychopath on the Harrop psychopathy checklist, big time. And Park Dietz told her, what you need to do is change your name, move away, change your name, and have no contact with him ever again. Park Dietz is correct. That's what she should have done. And she wasn't willing to do that. She thought she had to still be a mom to him in spite of what he did. And so she kept up communications. And really what she was accepting was abuse from him. And she was giving him what he wanted. And, he shouldn't be, my opinion, he shouldn't get some kind of reward for killing his sister. And that reward is anything you give him is a reward. And he still gets to gloat about. So she does say this. Oh, she said, this is just an interesting thing. She said, I take a kid with on meth, a 15-year-old pregnant daughter, any day over what I got. At least those parents can still have hope for change. She did know that he's a psychopath and he was not going to change. At another point, she said she thought prisons should do something more than just be a prison. They should do something to help people like this. But I think at that moment, she forgot that he's not going to change. And the prison system can't do anything with psychopaths. All they can really, what are you going to do with a psychopath? Now, the only thing you can do, Stanton Salmon, my favorite psychologist who worked at St. Elizabeth's, said, Well, you can modify their behavior, but only because you teach them that something else is better for them, not because you can teach them to be good people, but just that, hey, that's not benefiting you. Do this. And maybe the do this is not as dangerous as the other thing. So let's see what else. I have a couple of things I have. What is this? I'm looking at my little pictures here. I want to see what this is. Oh, okay. I'll be getting into why he did it, how he grew up, and why he did what he did. I'm going to check on some of your comments before I get into that. Okay. Let's see. He wants grandma's money. As a matter of fact, yes, he does. This is absolutely true. They did a trust fund, and he wanted to take it out of her hands and she to have it be in just grandma's hand. Yeah, I mean, when he gets out, he'll have a boatload of money. Yeah, he does want that. Let's see. LLB. Paris as a son does not exist anymore. This is true. He's not really her son. He's using emotional blackmail to get out of jail. Her new child is at risk forever from him. That is true. Absolutely true. And she does say this. Let's see if I can find it. Where'd it go? Is it here? Hold on a second. Oh, no, that was on the forgiveness thing. Hold on, where is thing here? Sorry, I'm trying to find it now. I've lost it. Okay. I've lost, me, and I always lose something. She said she doesn't trust him at all. I mean, so she knows that when he gets out, she could be in serious trouble. She does know that, and her son. And she's allowed something, I'll get into the son and what she's doing in life and what I just agree and disagree with in a minute. Yeah, he's going to always be a danger. And that's just something that has to be recognized. See a couple more comments and I'll go on. He and his grandmother are highly dangerous. His mother needs to accept what he is. She does. No, she does accept her son as a psychopath. There's no question about that. That's why she went before whatever it was and said, "Don't let him out." She knows he's a psychopath. She's not having the problem. The grandmother's claiming he's not a psychopath because grandma is likely exhibiting a lot of the psychopathic tendencies. So, birds of a feather. Kara says, I never understand that thinking. Empathy is so important. I always thought having pets in the home while raising children certainly breeds empathy, unless your psychopathic kid kills them. Also, I will say this about that. A lot of psychopaths do love animals. That's not empathy. They love the animal because the animal is their toy. Because the animal, like his little sister, is a toy. He can adore her, not because he cares about her in the way that you would think a human would care about something. He adores the attention he gets from her. He adores the attention he might get from a pet. But one of the things you'll note is that when they become no longer useful or in the way, or something is more worthwhile, they will dump that pet or human, or they will kill that pet or human. So don't mistake that somebody who loves an animal, appears to love an animal, is not a psychopath. I actually knew a psychopath who was fascinating. Actually, he was in jail. He was in prison for murder. He turned into a guy that did gutters and came to my house and said, he gave a good price on gutters. So he's like, I was like, so he said, so what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a criminal profiler. And he goes, oh, really? I just got out of the pen. And I said, what were you in there? And he goes, murder one. I'm like, geez. Anyway, the price was good. So anyway, he did my gutters. So, but at his home, he had cats. He was always holding a cat and patting it and all this stuff. But I knew he was a psychopath. So, but those then at some point he probably just killed the cat. If the cat was annoying to him, he'd probably just kill it, or whatever, or just toss it someplace. So if you remember the thing I did on Levante, is that his name now? Levante. The reason it's two back about the guy who killed his mother, drove out to California to kill his mother, and it's really amazing. So if you check that one out, he raised a dog, which he taught the dog to follow him and his mother without a leash, and he talked about that dog like he loved it. But after he killed his mother, he took the dog, and the dog's never been seen again. So I'm pretty sure he killed the dog. So don't believe that one. It's not. It does breed empathy if you already have a child who's not a psychopath. Other than that, it's not going to change them. So yeah. Yes, this is true. Mike says lack of remorse is a key characteristic of those with antisocial personality disorder. Yes, it is. Because why should they feel remorseful about something they wanted to do and other people don't matter? Where would the remorse come in? The only kind of remorse they might feel is for themselves, but certainly not for anybody else. Yeah, very scary. Luckily, I think that Piers Morgan interview was a stupid thing for him to do, because all the pro board needs to see that, and they will never let him out because he screwed up on that one. I'm not sure why Piers Morgan got to him that way, and why the documentary he comes off so much better. Fascinating. Charity's inability to act created the perfect breeding ground for him to fester his deadly fantasies and behaviors. Okay, I'm going to get into that. When we talk about what a parent should have done, there's a lot of truth in that. I mean, providing a home that a parent is very aware of what's going on and doesn't screw up too badly is important. But again, it did not quite make him a psychopath. But because I think it's a combo of I don't know why people are born with something a little off, and then I think environment can send it over, and then I think the ideation of violence becomes another issue. So let me go ahead and go to him growing up. Okay, let's see. Okay, just trying to find my stuff here. Now, it's interesting to go back and look at the pictures of him when he's young. And when you watch the documentary, the family I had, he just looks like the greatest brother ever. He really does. Look, he's always with his little sister. He's kissing her. He's playing with her. He's just like really cool. Now, mind you, his IQ is very, very high. Like genius. He's got a genius IQ. And before you say, serial killers have genius IQs or psychopaths have genius IQs. No, they don't. They have the spectrum of anybody else: low IQ, medium IQ, high IQ. So she's also very, very smart. Grandma was also very, very smart. They are a freaking smart family. I'll tell you that. When I was reading her book, there's so much in her book I absolutely loved. When she talked about philosophy of life, I was absolutely blown away by some of the things she said. I was I'll try to read some of those to you. And I thought they were brilliant. So yes, I think he was brilliant. Supposedly, she said at 6th grade, he was already got a college vocabulary. He was a top student. He was smart. So, and then in the videos, what you see is him, whenever he's around her, he's, for the most part, smiling and happy and kissing her and helped her get dressed. He'd like to pick out her clothes before she went to school, like a fashion critic, setting things out. And here's the problem that does a parent recognize at a very young age whether something's off with their child? And that's the problem. I believe the psychopathy is already set. And I'll read you a little bit later about what psychologists say about that. It's going to have this great article, and I'll link the great article below because it's got so many interesting things in it. They said the same thing. It's by 5, and I'm like, whoa, somebody agrees with me. And up until 5, what behaviors are there that show you this kid, something is amiss with this child? And the problem is, it's not necessarily super obvious things. And a lot of times when the child does do something a little strange, the tendency is to say, well, he just doesn't understand that yet. He misbehaves in a certain way, just doesn't get it. Is that true or not? So, for example, let's say a child hurts a pet. People, then you might say, oh, let's say this is a gerbil or something, and they squeeze it and it dies. Well, there are children who are not psychopaths who might use too strong a grip, not realizing that will kill the animal. And then you tell the child, no, you can't. Look what happened because you squeezed it too hard. But they might not realize that the psychopath actually enjoyed squeezing it too hard and killing the animal. So they may think it's has a different meaning. If the child does certain things, like, let's say, I had a friend who had a foster daughter. Foster daughter. She had a baby and a 3-year-old foster daughter. And the foster daughter tried to brain the baby with a heavy object. And I'm going to say that would be a sign. But she had been foster care. Some people will say she didn't understand what she was doing. So what happens is, because you love your child, and that child, you have to remember, as you're raising a child, you know, all the time you spend taking care of that little baby, nursing the baby, feeding the baby giggling and laughing, that's what you see your child as. And then when your child starts exhibiting a few weird stuff, you may not have a clue that means anything. You just so, oh, he's just being a silly boy. He's just being whatever. He needs to learn this. And so I've seen an awful lot of parents play off the behaviors of very young children, as do schools. Schools do that. Nursery schools do that. There'll be a child in there. You go, geez, I don't want my kid in the room with that kid. And the kid's only 4, but he's exhibiting those behaviors. But a lot of people haven't studied psychopathy. They don't know what a psychopath behaves like, especially when they're children. So she's going along, and there's something not quite right about him, but I don't think she recognizes it. Now, he does say a couple interesting things. Now, he was joking around with his little sister in the documentary, because they show a video of him doing this, and he's playing with her. And she's giggling and laughing, and then he puts her over his knee and sort of pops her on a diaper, not hard, just like, how it's a fake spanking thing. And then he says, "I will kill you." Now, I would say you should never ever say that. That's wrong to say that. But do you think that he meant it? I mean, do you really think, when your child has been being nice to his little sister all this time, and you haven't seen those behaviors, that he goes, "I will kill you"? You think that means he's actually going to do it? And then he said this, when Charity. So when when we have just a little baby here, so Paris says, she goes, she said something like, what one sentence or something, I can't remember what she said in there. And he goes, "Kill Charity's children?" He thought that was funny. She goes, "Come on now." Did she realize at that point in time that he meant it? And did he mean it? See, that's, and then used her first name and not. And of course, who is he talking about killing Charity's children? Somebody else came in and killed Charity's children. That would be bad. So here you have a kind of ambiguous statement. So you say, does that mean anything? So he's doing well in school, extraordinarily well in school. He wasn't disliked in school. Although his grandma says he was never that empathetic or social. Now, is she saying that now to say, hey, Charity, I knew it, but Charity didn't? Well, if she knows that, why isn't she saying he's a psychopath now? Now she says he's not a psychopath. Get out of here. Grandma. Anyway, then he becomes a teen. And here he is, looking happy. And he smiles a lot in photographs and in videos. And you look at this guy and you go, come on now, he's not going to kill his little sister. Who would even expect that? Now, let's look at something that did happen. So one day, while they were living at the Seymour Ranch, Paris was playing with Ella and another little girl when he broke a toy they were playing with. When Ella got upset, Lee scolded, I always want to call Charity, not Lee. Charity scolded her son and put him in timeout, which perfectly reasonable. She had stepped away for a minute when one of the housekeepers shouted that Paris had grabbed a kitchen knife and bolted out the door. When Charity and her mother finally tracked him down, he was waving the knife at him. His grandmother managed to grab the blade, hopefully not her hand, and Charity wrapped her arms around him. He just collapsed into this heap on the floor, she recalled. We didn't know what was wrong with him. So Charity admitted Paris to the Red River Hospital, a nearby psychiatric facility. And now there's varying stories here about what exactly happened. Grandma says that she took him out, even though they said he had homicidal tendencies, she just took him out anyway. Now, listen to what is written here, though. She grew frustrated with the doctors after having him there for a week, claiming they refused to communicate with her, which led her to believe that they were doing little to assess or treat Paris. The facility gave Lee some basic discharge papers when she picked up Paris, and the family moved west to Abilene for a fresh start. It was more than a year later, after Paris had murdered Ella, that the full file from the Red River was entered into Paris's record, and Charity read it for the first time. She was shocked to see what doctors had written. He is obsessed about shooting and killing, homicidal, suicidal ideation. So, do I think she knew this before she took him out? Or was nothing ever properly explained to her? Did they downplay it? Because they could have done an involuntary commitment on him. It's harder with children, and they often don't want to do that. They just think they'll send them home and, with some instructions to the parents, and they'll prevent the homicide or suicide. But they could do, if they were that concerned that this was a budding little serial killer, they could have done an involuntary admittance and kept him there for longer. But just a week later, they let her take him home. And if they just gave her some papers and didn't set up some kind of ongoing program of therapy with the two of them, with Paris. I mean, I don't know what happened there, but I think the psychiatric hospital probably, in spite of that, might have put it in the thing, may not have pushed it heavily enough. And I've seen that happen over and over again, where they don't really make it 100% clear that your child is showing antisocial behavior. He might well be a psychopath, and you bring him home with your other child. You really got to watch that other child, because you don't ever know what he will do. He apparently doesn't have a problem using a knife, right? Because that's what he grabbed when that's the reason I took him to the hospital. He grabbed a knife, which is exactly what he used on her. So that, and then, so that, then about, I guess it was about 6 months later, that this incident occurred. So we have maybe something in the childhood early. Then we have this event, which this should be a big wake-up call, but how well did they work with her very well or not? I do not know. So then we'll go into what exactly happened here. Okay. So Charity had to work her shift at Buffalo Wild Wings near Abilene on the night this happened. A 21-year-old Hardin Simmons University student was babysitting Paris and Ella on that night. Now, clearly she did not really know or believe 100% that he was homicidal, because, would you leave? She had to work. She had to go to work. So she did get a babysitter, which is a good thing. You have a babysitter. You're not saying your 13-year-old should be 100% responsible. Although 13-year-olds can be responsible for I used to babysit at 13 years old. So it's legal for a brother or a sister to watch the younger brother or sister when they're 13. That's not illegal. She decided not to do that. She decided to have a babysitter anyway, which is costly for a person who's working at Wild Wings. So in a later statement she gave to police, the babysitter recounted taking the kids out for Chinese food and watching the cartoon version of Alice in Wonderland before Ella went to sleep, and Paris retired to his room to finish homework. Crime scene photos show Paris's outline for an essay on the Trojan War. Paris kills Achilles. Okay, And then sometime around 10 p.m., Paris convinced the babysitter she could go home. Well, lucky for that babysitter, she was not there because she could easily have been a murder victim. But he convinced her to go home. The mom's just about, she's going to be home in a second. So he convinced her to go home. It was after that he grabbed a kitchen knife, walked into the room where Ella was sleeping, and then he beat, choked, and stabbed her 17 times. Paris then called a friend to say he'd heard his sister. Called a friend, not 911. Called a friend. A call police say lasted nearly 6 minutes because, he's not intending for her to live. So when he hung up, he waited 2 more minutes before calling 911 to report the murder. Now, here's where it gets interesting. This is where the psychopathy shows up. Well, first of all, that he killed the sister in a brutal way. Secondly, because he wanted to chat with a friend until he was planning his alibi is what he was doing. So now he calls 911. He told the officers he attacked Ella while in the throes of a vivid hallucination, that he was sleeping next to Ella and he woke up to a terrifying scene, a demonic version of his sister engulfed in flames that was laughing maniacally at him. And the detectives were like, yeah, I'm not buying that one. Anyway, when he called 911, the dispatcher told Paris to move Ella from the bed, because there was a lot of blood on there, and put her on the floor, well, also because she wanted a hard surface, to perform CPR. He was very resistant at first, but appeared to later comply with her request. On the call, the dispatcher tells Paris to give Ella 30 chest compressions at a time. On tape, Paris can be heard counting his compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Only thing is, when the detective got there, she wasn't on her. She was on her side or back or on her stomach. He never gave her those chest compressions at all. He was walking around the room with the phone going, 1, 2, 3, 4. He planned this murder. It wasn't a spur of the moment thing. This was premeditated. He didn't lose his mind. He premeditated this whole thing and made sure that he wanted to do what he wanted to do, and he wanted to get the babysitter out of the house. He made sure she didn't survive, and he faked crying on the 911 call. He's crying, and his mother goes, "Yeah, that's not the way he sounds when he cries." Faked the crying. He fakes the CPR. So, the one Abilene police officer says when he interviewed Paris that night of the murder, he wrote in his report, at times during the interview process, Paris would appear as if he were attempting to cry. However, he did not appear to be sincere with those attempts. He never even had tears. Charity tried to believe Paris's version of events. That changed when she got the autopsy report. Before reading that, I had no idea what Ella had suffered. She said she found there was semen on the bed and in the shorts that Paris was wearing. So, what was his motive, you ask? Well, a lot of people believed his motive was to cause pain to his mother because he was angry with his mother for being a not good enough mother, that he wanted to cause her pain by taking away both of her children, essentially, at the same time, killing her daughter and then taking himself out of the picture too. So she would suffer pain. He thought about killing her, but then he decided, no, it'd be better if I make her suffer for a really long time. I am not sure that's the real reason. I think there's two reasons, and this is where you see the psychopathy very, very strongly. One, that there are those who say, and I don't know that I believe this entirely, but I partially can see it to some extent. She had him, her little boy, and then when she had her, some people say that she paid way more attention to her than to him at that point. She became the golden child, and he was not as important as her daughter was. That she showed much more affection toward her daughter and much more interest in her daughter than she did to Paris. Now, this has happened in a number of families where that is exactly the problem, that one gets more attention for some reason. Now, why is that? Sometimes it's because the parent simply really prefers that one child, that child, let's say you have a child who is, you have a child who's kind of difficult to get along with and not very successful at certain things and doesn't play sports. And then you have the next child and he is like the soccer star and he's super friendly and everybody loves him. So your tendency is to have more affection and appreciation of that child than the other one that's not doing so well. And then the one that's not doing so well gets tired of that damn golden child. He wants more attention from his parent because that golden child took the attention away from me. If I get rid of the golden child, I get my parent all to myself. So I think in this particular case, because he's clearly a psychopathic person, then psychopaths do not like to share, and they do not want somebody to have to, they, as long as he was playing with the kid and having a good time, he was willing to do that because she was his toy. And then when he saw his mother kept giving so much attention to her, he's like, well, if I get rid of her, then I'll get all the attention, even if I'm in prison. And it's funny because I've seen this with other cases, some that I have actually, I'll try to find the case that I worked on and I'll link it below. I'll say this is the case where it's the Cain and Abel story. Cain got fed up with Abel getting the attention, so he got rid of Abel. And interestingly enough, once he got rid of Abel, guess what he got? Cain goes to prison, and his parents are trying desperately to prove he didn't kill the little brother, which he did. They came to me to have me prove that he didn't do it. And he did. I said, I can't go there because your older son did kill your younger son. And clearly the evidence was overwhelming. But to this day, they refuse to believe it. And they go to prison and they pay attention to him. And he's got the attention even though he's in prison. Same for him. Whatever he wanted that attention. And mommy still comes to prison. Grandma still comes to prison. I say, don't give him the damn attention. Stay away from the prison. Cut him off. But that's one of the things he wanted. That was one reason. Not to say she was a bad mother, so I'm paying her back. I don't believe that one. Secondly, semen was found at the scene. So there does appear to be a couple possibilities. One is he could have been doing something to his sister, or he was just super excited by her death, and that aroused him sexually. So before he killed her, he was online looking at gore sites. He was looking at snuff sites, violent porn. He was watching that stuff. Now, there's one thing I say about people, about the darkness surrounding our kids in the society. And that's why I'm against violent video games. I'm against violent movies. For children to see, because when you get this kind of guy, he will start glomming onto that and he will get excited by it. If he never saw it, maybe he would have gone to murder. Maybe it would have been annoying in other ways, been a con artist or something. But that can be one, if you're watching that stuff over and over again and it excites you, the blood and the gore and the terror and all that stuff, then many teenagers said, I want to see what it feels like to kill somebody. I want that thrill. And he did say he got a thrill out of killing her. And so maybe it was also sexually aroused doing that. So could be that he had sexually abusing her, but I don't know that that's true. But I think had the two major reasons, in my opinion, are he wanted to get her the attention to go away from her, and he also wanted to kill because he thought it would be exciting, and it was. So he got that thrill, and then he gets the attention from his mother. And if he was like jealous over his little sister at some point. Yeah, it's like, well, you shouldn't have paid so much attention to her. You should have paid more attention to me. Now, if you actually look at a lot of the videos and things that were going on, he had a pretty damn good life. I know she messed up. She knows she messed up. She wasn't perfect, but he lived in a decent home. He had food. He had activities. He was into skateboarding at that time, was in all kinds of activities, doing well in school. Hey, his life didn't suck like some people's, but it wasn't enough for him because a lot of psychopaths are greedy. So that's what I think he was. That's the motive, I think. I want to read this little next piece. After this happened, on her next visit to the nearby juvenile justice center where Paris was being held before his sentencing and being transferred to a youth correctional facility, Lee told her son, "I know you did this on purpose. I know you're lying." Paris got quiet, and then there was a whole shift in his demeanor. It was like the whole other person took over. He started laughing at her. And he said, "Well, it took you fucking long enough." Paris then grew violent when she asked him about the semen issue that they found, flipping a table onto her before storming off and punching a wall. So she actually got hit by the table, and they had to come in and grab him. So that's who he is. And that's what I think the motive is. I'll go to some of your comments now. Let's see. Oh, lots of them. Lots of comments. This is a good point. It's not just growing up in a poor neighborhood, because so many people grow up in poor neighborhoods and do not become criminals. And some grow up rich. His grandmother is excessively rich. And his house that he lived in was perfectly nice. And you saw all kinds of fun things. They were going out to dinners where they were having a decent, his life with his mother was not bad. I never heard about any abuse. She seemed to adore both children. And yes, maybe she had a drug problem. She relapsed. But other than that, it seemed like not that bad a life. People have had a lot worse. This is true. LLB says, professionals do not like admitting children are psychopaths. That's correct. It's widely known children are psychopaths. No amount of therapy will help. It just makes them better psychopaths. That is true. That's one of the things that happen in prison. They have them go to these therapy groups. And what they do is they learn how to behave in a way that they can manipulate people with. They'll learn what they should feel. They'll learn what they should say. And they especially pay attention because that's what they need to go to the parole board. And if you watch the Family I Had documentary, you'll see him doing that over and over and over again. I don't understand. The Pierce Morgan one's so funny because it's the exact polar opposite, where you see nothing but a cold-blooded psychopath through the whole thing saying all the wrong things. So one documentary is saying all the right things, other ones he's saying all the wrong things. I guess it all depends what day they caught him on. I wanted to read this thing. Where is it? Wanted to read the part about hold on. Okay. The idea that psychopathic tendencies can be detected in children remains controversial. And I think that's very true. Very young, it's hard to figure them out because they've already learned manipulation. A young child who does not like the way things are going, what they do is they're like, I play this game and I lose. I don't like losing at all, because psychopaths never like losing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the rules of the game, and I'm not going to tell anybody what the rules are, but I'm going to win every time. There is no accepted standard test for psychopathy in children, and some psychologists argue that it's almost impossible to diagnose in children or teenagers because their brains are still developing, and normal behavior at those ages may be misinterpreted as psychopathic. And that is a problem. I remember I said, you don't know whether the kids squeezed that gerbil because they weren't paying attention or because they like killing it. That's what you don't know. Researchers have linked psychopathic behavior to low levels of cortisol in the brain and below normal function in the, I can never pronounce this word, amygdala, the portion of the brain that processes fear, shame, and remorse. I don't know how solid that is, by the way. And they keep looking for some brain proof that a person's a psychopath, and people seem to think there's a lot more evidence than there is. Still, a small but growing number of psychologists now say psychopathy, like autism, is a distinct neurological condition that can be identified in children as young as 5 years old. I don't think it's a distinct neurological condition. I just think it's a distinct condition, a behavioral condition. And then say 5 years old. That's what I said. By 5 years old, you can, if you know what you're looking for, you may be able to see it. I have seen children who are 5 years old, and I have said to myself, that kid's a psychopath. And it's because I've seen so many of the behaviors. I see it's not okay, but other people just don't see it at all. So I thought that was really interesting. Let's see. New York Times Magazine profiled the work of Florida International University psychologist and researcher Dan Washbush, who employs a combination of psychological checklists and exams to screen for what he calls, quote, callous, unemotional children whose lack of affect. And he admits he has a lack of affect. When you watch the Piers Morgan one, that's his face. Through the whole thing. Just cold. When you watch the other one, he does have more affect. Again, I think the difference is, I think in the family I had, he is acting. When a psychopath wants to act something out, they learn techniques to present themselves as that person who cares. When you don't catch them in that mood, when they're just being themselves, that's what you get. Callous, unemotional children whose lack of affect, remorse, and empathy, he contends, put them at risk of becoming psychopaths as adults. I don't think it's putting them at risk. I think they're already there. Then it's just a matter of what direction that psychopath takes. There's other psychopaths are not necessarily violent. They have all kinds of other things they can get into. Let's see. Now, his attorney claims he has a form of Asperger's syndrome. Well, that's useful. And people who have Asperger's, you can complain. Okay, it's like, that doesn't make you a psychopath, you know. Of course, he's saying he's not a psychopath, he's just Asperger's. Asperger's people do not kill people like that. That's a psychopath. That affects his ability to socialize and communicate with others. Okay. Wait, what's this? She says, I know he's dangerous. I know he's different. I didn't just wake up one day and think, I'm going to call my son a psychopath. It was a hard realization to come by. Yes, because a parent wants to have any excuse not to recognize psychopathy. And by the way, they also say here, I think it was in this article, that sociopathy, psychopathy, sociopath, psychopath, pretty much interchangeable. Some people try to make these lists. This is what a sociopath is. This is what a psychopath is, and all of it's nonsense. It's just picking out different traits, and I don't even think the traits make any sense to be separate. I just think I've just never agreed with that. Some of the things he said. When she came and asked him why he didn't just kill, she broke down crying on one of the things, and this is a very psychopathic statement. He said, God damn it, Ma, just get over it already. It's been almost 2 years. It's been almost 2 years already. People die all the time. See, death, people dying to him doesn't matter because he could care less. So she went to, she read a prepared statement when they had a hearing. She read a prepared statement advocating that Paris be sent to prison. That was the hardest thing I've ever written because of, she said she knew, that's what he is. I truly feel my son is dangerous and that if he were released, I would be in danger or somebody else could get hurt. So she's willing to say that. Let's see here. Oh, he says this too. This is more Paris's things that he likes to say. See, I don't, I told Paris that Charity explained to me in one of our conversations she feels there are two Parises, the one capable of monstrous things and the one she loves. See, I don't see that, he said, because everybody has within them the capacity for violence. And given the right set of circumstances, you can act on that capacity. I held grudges. I was passive aggressive. I had poor empathy skills. All that led up to what I did. Well, that's what he's saying is that, you see, I had issues, and that's why I ended up killing. But it's not because I'm a psychopath. Not, yeah, that's useful. Let's say, he says, I'm aware that my flat affect hurts me. I'm fairly helpless to do anything about it. I'm not going to act like somebody else that I'm not. I asked him how he could cope with what he did to Ella. Dealing with it would involve a lot of introspection, and this isn't an environment that's ideal for that, he said somewhat flatly, being in prison. Those type of answers I told him reinforced the notion he has little remorse for what he's done. Paris told me he still keeps many of his feelings about the murder walled off because those thoughts and memories have really sharp edges, and every time I handle them, I end up getting cut. Okay. See what else he said. So now she's had this newborn son, by the way. So she, another guy she's not with, but where's her son? Cute picture of her son. Where'd it go? Oh, here he is. So she had this new baby. She calls Phoenix, and there she is. This is she. I think one of the problems is she gets suckered a lot by him. She got a letter from Paris that shows an emotional side he rarely reveals. No, he's not showing it. He's just making it up. Paris expresses both joy for his mother's baby and sorrow that he'll never be involved in his brother's life. The day after giving birth, Charity spoke to Paris over the phone. She relayed what the doctor told her about the baby needing open heart surgery. To her surprise, Paris wept. I don't know if I've ever heard him that emotional before because he's faking it. Charity, he's faking it. He's always faking it. She fears she could lose another child. She's worried. She obviously wants to protect that child. However, she ended up allowing him to. He's writing all these letters. He says to save him for him when he's a teenager. He now gets a phone. He had gotten a phone call with his younger brother, and they chatted, and he's really cool during the phone calls. And so the younger brother singing Paris, yeah, he's in jail for supposedly murdering my sister, but hey, not so bad. It's not such a bad guy. He's developing some kind of a relationship. Why she wants to do that is questionable. It's, I think it's foolish. I think she should have taken that kid and run. However, there is something that's just happened where did I see this? Okay, where is it? I think it's here. Couple of things. When you're reading her book, she's like forgiven her mother, and she's gone to live with her mother. Her mother has I think she's 4th-stage cancer now. And apparently 3 years after she wrote the book, she cut off all communication with Paris. And I think that's a really wise thing to do. So I was happy that she did that. Trying to see where I read that. So I know I read, here we go. Hold on. She posted this on Facebook. She started this organization, by the way. I'll explain what happened to her afterwards. She started doing a whole bunch of work in the community, to improve conditions in prisons. She started this group, which I thought was great, was she thought that not only should families of victims of crimes get support, but also the families of the killers should get support, in the sense that a lot of times she's saying she knows what she went through when she's, when her son killed her daughter. And when you read the book, you see what an emotional wreck she is, just a roller coaster of, trying to improve herself one day, trying to feel better, and then the next day she wants to kill herself. Because it's so hard to accept that, yes, there is rational reason to support, in spite of the fact that the killer's family, people really have sympathy for them. It's difficult to have sympathy for them. It all depends how they present themselves. Sometimes they present themselves in such a way it's like pisses you off. But if they just, if they're totally 100% traumatized and have great feeling for the victim and are horrified that their child did that to the victims, I think they could deserve a little bit of help. But anyways, this is what she wrote 3 years ago. So 23, okay, 25, 2022. This is after the documentaries, after she wrote her book, and that she moved in with her mom. She was trying to establish a decent relationship with her mom. They're saying it's going well. Because I think she just, I don't know. She wants to always mend fences. And she was still in contact with him, and Phoenix, the little kid, was still in contact with him. Then she says this. Phoenix, who is 8 now, this is 3 years ago, is still amazing, super smart. He's also tested high in IQ. Funny, moody, stubborn, and very attached to his mama. This spring, he was formally diagnosed with ADHD. We made the joint decision to try a low-dose medication to see how it went. Phoenix and I are both happy with the outcome. I finally took the plunge and pulled Phoenix out of public school and began homeschooling him again. I'm homeschooling him. I'm a homeschooler, so a lot of people say, why is she doing that? She wants total control. That's what people told me when I homeschooled my 3 kids. Again, Phoenix and I are both pretty damn happy with the outcome. Online schooling was not for him. Wasn't quite. COVID really messed everything up for her, as it did most of us. Trying to fit a square peg into a round hole is not for either of us. Where he's still in public school, he would have entered 3rd grade this August. Homeschool is year-round with a 2-week break every 3rd month, and he's just starting 4th grade curriculum. Then she said she moved out to the country to be closer to her mother as she's dealing with stage 4 cancer. At some point, the cancer will spread to her brain, but she's still there. I completely walked away from my eldest child and have not looked back. It is one thing to be a child who makes horrible decisions. It's another thing altogether to be a 27-year-old man and keep making decisions that put your family at risk. The final straw, because even though she knew he was a psychopath, she had this little bit of her that hoped he would become a better person. As I said, not happening. The final straw was learning he was involved with a woman who lived 2 hours away from us and was out on bond for planning a mass shooting. Boundaries have been crossed too many times. I bought a gun, learned to shoot. I'm really good now, and said goodbye. I finally accepted it was okay to love him as my son, but really dislike the man he has become. I hope she's continued to keep him out of her life. I shut down the Ella Foundation. That was what she did in her name. She did it for 13 years. Helping people with all kinds with the same type of traumas, doing a lot of speaking engagements. At least I think I like the fact that she was trying to do something to help people. After 13 years of processing my trauma by helping others process their trauma, one movie, which is the one made the documentary, countless interviews, countless classes, taught one book, hundreds of speeches, and the setting of so many examples of love, empathy, and compassion for anyone who looked to me as an example. I reached the point in life where I finally felt I had kept my promise to Ella. She said she promised Ella she would do something good in her name, so her death wouldn't be meaningless, to make something meaningful coming from her death. Now I stay focused mostly on the present. The past is always with me. The future is not mine yet to dwell on too long, and the present I have is a blessing. I have learned how to be truly at peace with my existence, except for those days when homeschool is not going well, and I have to remind myself, yeah, okay, it's all temporary. Yeah, I understand that. So that's it. That's what she's doing. That's how she's living at this point in time. She's obviously had her road has been very, very rough and horrible. Again, I recommend her book, and some of those. I don't know if I can pull them up or not. I saved so many of them from her book. I actually got the book because it was I was told it was free on Kindle, but it was Kindle, the library of Kindle, where you have to pay every month. And it's $0 for the month, so I got it. But then I liked her book so well, I just went ahead and paid the $10, and I got it for $10. But she writes in that book. Let me point out a few things. I'll go back to your comments, and I'll end it with that. But let me see if I can find some of her comments. Let's see. One of the things that's just so amazing is that she goes. One of the people said that her book was disjointed, that she's all over the place, and she does a lot of just thinking about things, and she actually though, because I looked, why the heck is she so detailed and everything? She's a journalist. I mean, she journals, not a journalist. I don't know if that's what it's called. She journals. And she writes, she was probably part of her getting through things. She wrote things down on what she was doing every day and how she felt. And I don't do that kind of thing, so I can't remember anything that happened in the past at all. But she does that. But you get a lot of her thinking process. Like she says, I kept thinking, my daughter is in there dead. My son killed her. This does not make sense. This is not happening. My daughter is in there dead. My son killed her. This does not make sense. This is not happening. Over and over and over. Sorry, that one gets me. Because I can see her. This is right after it happened. I can see her. Because right when this all goes down, how can you believe that yesterday you thought things were okay, and the next day this, and you just can't believe it. Over and over and over. That's what people who are traumatized by this kind of tragedy, this kind of horror, it just runs constantly in the head. Just horrible. I just found this one of the most emotional books I've ever read, and true to when people go through this kind of trauma. I recommend anybody who's ever been through something horrible read this book. I mean, I really, really like it that much. I mean, yeah. She said, she's talking about the things that were done. He says that is Paris's fault. I'll never be able to mother Paris again. That is Paris's fault. I live in hell and I'm coming apart at the seams. That is Paris's fault. My children were my reason for being, and now those reasons are gone. That is Paris's fault. Some just real honest stuff. Yeah, I'm just going to go through a bunch of these because I just think they're amazing. Did she call for me? This is on the murder. Did she call for me, scream for me? Did she think I had abandoned her? Now there's where the massive guilt comes in, because she should have seen it coming. She should have protected her. She's thinking this to herself. And now when her daughter's being murdered, by her own brother, she's thinking, Mommy, why is this happening? Mommy, help me. Mommy, save me. Where are you, Mommy? Yeah. As we talked, he preened in front of a small window, hoping to catch a glimpse of the reporters. Do you think they can see me? He asks. He doesn't seem to care that they're telling a story because he's a villain and did something evil. It seems all he cares about is that they're talking about him. Then she goes here, I hate my son, I hate my son, I hate my son, I hate my son, I hate my son. I miss my Ella. What the fuck am I going to do? All I want is to lie down on the floor. You know what's disgusting? And cease to exist. Oh, yeah. Now I'm trying to find some of the really cool stuff statement she made, some of the more philosophical things. I think she's a very, very smart person. Oh, this is one time he did talk about, they did hurt animals, by the way. One day during a storm, I found Paris on the porch. He had 15 or so frogs in a bucket and was dropping them off the porch, watching the bodies hit the ground 30 feet below. I asked him, Paris, what are you doing? He looked at me and told me he liked the sound the frogs made when they hit. So there are these things, but again, you think, is he just being a stupid boy? Does he not realize what he's doing? Let's see. Okay. A couple more things here. I'm trying to find the philosophical things just because I thought they were so neat. I know I kept them. So I have a whole bunch of things here. Where is it? Come on. This is how many notes I copied from the book. I just, that's what I say. Rarely do I find a book that I really like this much. No, I can't. No, I just can't find things now. I should have pulled those out earlier, but I was mostly focused on the crime and not so much the philosophical stuff. But I just thought the way she looked at the world, the way she dealt with it, I thought was pretty cool. Let's see. Now this is just a cool one from Fugazi. She put this one in here. You can't be what you were, so you better start being just who you are. I like that statement. So it was one of the things she was trying to impart to a lot of people she was trying to help when she was doing these speaking engagements and working with people who've been abused and whatever. She said, you can't be what you were. She can't be what she was. She lost her 2 children. There's no place, you can't go back. There's nothing you can do about that. Whatever happened before, you can't fix it. It's gone. You can only get her to start being who you are. I like that one. Oh, this is nice. She says, in a violent crime, the victims aren't the only wounded. This is very true. A lot of times we have, it's that if we have a victim who's been abused and whatever, you can get victim services for that. Those who know and love the victims are wounded too. The violence, the trauma affects everyone who comes into contact with it, is exposed to it. Family, friends, lovers, the community, those who read of it, those who witnessed, those who participated, those who chose to bury their heads in the sand, those who try to do some right. Violence resonates harsh, shrill, and depending upon the singer, can sustain its note indefinitely. Yeah. There's just so many things that she said in this book. Yeah, okay, I'm going to stop it. Get the book. I mean, if you really wanted to read about all of this, I just think it's a beautiful book. I don't care who has naysayers against her and don't like her. Yeah, it's just really good. That's what I think. Let me go to your comments. Okay, it's a long way down. It's hard to put. This a little thing you have to keep pulling down. I'm trying to get to the bottom and go back up. Definitely will get the book. I think it's wonderful. Good night, Kara. Let's see. I can hardly look at him. He gives me the shivers. Yeah, he really does. And it's funny because when he's a little boy, he kind of looked cute. I don't know what I guess that's the evil thing. Yeah, and this is actually true. He has black, empty eyes. He does have that cold look. It's creepy, very, very creepy. Charity has such warm eyes. I hope she's doing well. Well, she's where she is in life right now. You know, say when you read her book, you realize that she had a rough life and she made many, many mistakes. But she has tried, I think, to be a good mother. I think she definitely tried, and I think she tried to handle this. I mean, how she handled this, as she points out, how many times she tried to commit suicide, how many times she is falling apart and losing it completely, and then trying to stand back up again, and then trying to help people. I mean, she did. She helped many, many people. Some people think she's just, you know, it's all about her. She's narcissistic, so she's just wanted to get, you know, just wanted to be out there and have people pay attention to her. I think she really wanted to help people. I really do. I don't see that in her at all. You know, not that when you go out in front of people, you do get attention. I mean, that's not necessarily means you're a narcissist. I've had people say the same thing about me. I'm a narcissist because I'm on YouTube, and therefore I just love people paying attention to me and, you know, saying nice things to me. Not the people that say nasty things to me, but the nice part. You know, it's part and parcel of being in the public eye and to working. And there's tons of people who do this, and people don't call them a narcissist, but they're pretty mean about her. And of course, the thinking is, if your mother exhibits psychopathy and your son exhibits psychopathy, and you're that sandwiched in the middle, what does that make you? And did you get narcissism from your mother, and that narcissism caused him to become a psychopath? I mean, it's a reasonable question. I just don't. Did she think about herself sometimes, maybe to the detriment of the children? Sure, with the affairs she had with guys and drugs, sure, that's true. She did say, you know, she's quite a mess on certain things, and she admits that. But all in all, I don't necessarily think she was a bad mother. Engineer says, hi, engineer. When I was a kid, a boy around age 5 snuck outside and intentionally killed 7 baby chicks during a party. He was never allowed in the neighborhood again. I sometimes wonder what he's done as an adult. Interesting. Yeah, that's pretty dang creepy. Because chicks usually are adorable, you know, and you don't kill chicks for food. So you can't say, well, I grew up on a farm, so we kill chicks. You know, well, sometimes they eliminate chicks because they're just in the way. That's sometimes a farm thing, but yeah. I don't know if grandma's still alive at this point. I didn't see that. She had stage 4 cancer. And this was written like 3 years ago. So I would kind of doubt it. Yeah, that surely is a bad combo, Clarissa. You're right about that. Oh no, she's not going to make it. She's got stage 4 cancer. So, oh, I don't think the mother resented her because of the right of her father. She got rid of, which it was believed she might have gotten rid of. I think in the long run, when she started standing up for herself. Now, this is what happens a lot of times with psychopaths. Not saying she is one, just saying she exhibits some of those behaviors. That the useful in the way thing. When the child is little, a lot of psychopaths will be a father or a mother to little children and think they're cute and like them because they come, daddy, mommy, and they make them feel good. But they get to a certain age, they start saying, no, mommy, no, daddy, I don't want to. And at that point, they can get really annoyed with them because they're not getting the attention they like, the super positive, always positive attention. They have to put out more work to get any positive attention. So they get annoyed with the kid and then just want to either get rid of them or start trying to overly continue to on the manipulation thing. So I think with her, her mom kicked her out. It was a poor mom to her. Doesn't seem to even understand why she got into drugs, in spite of the fact that her dad was murdered and she grew up in this weird household, and then kicks her out. And then when it's convenient for mom, she tries to get back into her life, but she also likes to control things and show her daughter that she's, more capable than she. And in certain ways, probably she was more capable as far as running a whole company, being very successful society-wise, getting her 7 husbands, and she only had 3. So, yeah. Yeah, this is with just torturing herself with the thoughts on how her life ended. That is a very difficult thing. I don't think people realize. Now, she wasn't there to see it, but she saw her body, and I think that is something you can't get out of your head. I recently, my sister had ALS, and she died fairly recently. And I was with her, my sister and I, and her daughter and her husband were all with her. She was in hospice at home, and I was with her when she took her last breath. My sister had gone out to just get something out of the refrigerator, and she felt badly that she wasn't there for our sister's last breath. And I just looked at her and I said, "You dodged a bullet," because I wish I could get that picture out of my head, that video out of my head. It's, some people, say, "Oh, it's so nice," but it was very painful to watch. And yeah, so can imagine that I had a child who was brutally murdered, and all that would run that through my head over and over and over again, even if I didn't see it, but if I saw their body. And yeah, that's very difficult to deal, extremely difficult to deal with. That's why some people end up needing some kind of therapy just to make them not lose their minds. And that's why they take medications, antidepressants. And this is one time where I think I'm never in favor of medication, but this is one time I say, take the damn antidepressants, because sometimes it's the only way you can even get through the day without killing yourself. She's still making bad choices. 3 kids, no father, going back to the toxic environment. Think her son needs to be in school, not with her making him too dependent. Definitely the third one, getting him pregnant again. Maybe, it's hard to say. She was alone. Maybe she just wanted that child, not to replace the other 2, but because it brings life back into her life, beauty back into her life. I can't blame her for that, even if I don't think she should have picked somebody better to do it with. Going back to the toxic environment of a mother's home was not, I don't think, is bright. I don't know what her reasoning for doing that is. Maybe it's because it's a free place to stay. Maybe it's because she really thinks she can, now that her mother's ill. And maybe true. Maybe her mother's much nicer because she's ill. Sometimes that is true. That sometimes you have people who, like, say, mafia people, and now they're at the hospital and they've got some cancer or something, and they're in their wheelchair, and every nurse will say that's the nicest guy ever. And it's because he needs all the people to be nice to him. So maybe her mom needs to be, she wants her there. That mom wants something in her life. She wants people to pay attention to her. She'll get the little kid that is cute to pay attention to her. And now her daughter will help take care of her, even though she's rich. So she doesn't need her to take care of her physically, but maybe so who knows? So do I think it's a bright idea? I don't know. Maybe at this point in time, it'll help her out. As far as homeschooling, again, I'm a homeschooler. So again, people say, "Oh, you're trying to control all your kids." No, I wasn't pleased with the school system. I didn't want my kids in the school system, and I homeschooled them all the way through. So, and they seem to have turned out fine. So maybe she thinks her kid is very bright and he's in school. He supposedly has ADHD. I don't know if I believe that crap, but that's what she was diagnosed with. Maybe he wasn't doing well in the school situation, so she decided she would take him out. And they live on this big, huge farm. They got horses and stuff. It's maybe a nice place to live and the kid can run, and maybe she's doing fine homeschooling. She's smart as hell. So she can teach them. There's not any issue with that. And just because you're homeschooled doesn't mean you're not socializing. That's just, people said that to me too. Oh, your kids aren't social. Yeah, they were. They were playing sports with Boys and Girls Club, involved in Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, played with other homeschool kids, got together. We had homeschool days where it was science day, or it was art day, and somebody'd hold that at their house, and then you go over there and everybody's doing art. You got to know all kinds of kids of different ages, and got to see all kinds of adults that you considered your aunties and uncles. I loved homeschooling, and my kids were perfectly social. I mean, they weren't being prevented from something. So that's a misunderstanding. I understand where you get it from, because that's a very common belief that you take a kid out of school and you've got them on a, hidden away, and only you and their child are together. No, there's nothing else in their lives. That's not quite the way it is. So I don't think so. Let's see. He is very cunning and knows the links between psychopathy and Asperger's symptoms, particularly in childhood. He knows because he murdered in childhood, he can play the system for parole. Absolutely, 100%. No question. Well, I don't know that he's a replacement. And Phoenix, okay. He's a rising, obviously she said rising Phoenix. People do sometimes things that bring happiness to themselves. Should she have no other children in her life ever because things went badly? I don't know that that's fair. I do think she should have been married and had a kid. I'm not saying all her choices are the brightest choices, but I understand some of them because that's the way it is. I mean, I had 2 children biologically, and my third pregnancy ended up in tubal pregnancy, and then I couldn't get pregnant again. And one day somebody said, do you want to adopt a 5-year-old boy? And we did. And somebody could say, well, you're just adopting him to replace the one you lost. No, it was just that I had wanted another child and I hadn't been able to have one. And then this opportunity came into my life, and he brought more life and joy to the house. And now, he's a 40-year-old guy, and he's, it's great. I have three wonderful children, and I'm happy we adopted him. So, getting inside, saying, because, always that there's a strict thing, I don't go for. I go for things could be better. I'm very strong about the concept of not having children outside of wedlock. I'm very particular about having anonymous sex all the time, getting pregnant by people right and left. I don't agree with all of that, but I also understand people are human and they're dealing with what they're dealing with. So hopefully Phoenix will grow up to be a happy child, and hopefully he will never have to actually meet his brother. And maybe now he's older, and he says, why don't I talk to my brother anymore? She'll go, well, because he's just not safe to talk to. So who knows what to explain that. That's going to be a difficult thing to explain. That's for damn sure. I mean, yeah, that's very difficult. Any kid who's growing up in a family where somebody did something to somebody, it's always going to have a long-term impact of that kind of pain that one has when daddy killed mommy, mommy killed daddy, daddy is a mass murderer, daddy's a serial killer. All the kids who've grown up with serial killer dads, you think that was just your dad, and then when you find out one day he's a serial killer, Jesus God, I mean, that's horrible. So the question is, you might say, as though she didn't have to bring this child into the world to have to deal with it. That's true. But people bring their children into the world for, because they want a child. And oftentimes there's all kinds of things to deal with. So, yeah. I don't know that any of that's true. I think you're jumping to conclusions. You don't know how much pressure she put on the kids at all. We have no idea. They could be a perfectly normal household. I don't know where you're getting that from. So we have to be very careful not to make assumptions that we don't know, because we don't know. I have not seen any evidence that she over pressured her kids to any kind of extreme point. I haven't seen that. I don't know where you're getting it from. I think you don't like her. I think you have a feeling about her, you don't like her. And that's what a lot of people have done. So they have all kinds of negative things to say. But all I can say is, if you grew up the way she did and went through the hell she went through, she may not be a perfect person today. She may have her issues, but I can't hold a lot of dislike of her because I see what she's been through is horrendous. And if you read the book, you'll see what I mean. It's one of the books that made me more emotional than any others, because I know what she was saying was true about the emotions she was dealing with, which are just something that none of us should ever want to go through. So, yeah. On her Amazon bio says she was a speaker and a certified crisis interventionist, and that she worked to get better treatment. That is all true. She actually is against the death penalty. We have different politics on that. I think I don't know. She's against it because, well, I'm not quite sure why she's against it. I think, yeah, I'm not quite sure on that, but she has pushed for better treatment in prisons, and she does believe, I think, that a person who goes into prison, if they're not a psychopath, they may be made one. And I think our prisons are pretty deplorable, because it looks like an inside of like gangland, and I think that's horrible. Now I have a different feeling towards psychopaths and people who can be rehabilitated. People can be rehabilitated. I don't think should be dealing with having to fight gangs and all that kind of stuff and have all kinds of negative stuff in their environment. I think it should be a more peaceful, quiet environment, and maybe that would help them, become a more peaceful person and get some education and training. I think that's fine if they're going to be released and they're not psychopaths. But I think if you're a serial killer, mass murderer, this kind of guy, those things, either I believe in the death penalty on those people, or lock them away someplace. We don't have to ever hear from them again. That's my opinion. I don't like the constant interviews and all that kind of stuff. I do think I have to say it was interesting with him. I don't usually like killers to be interviewed to give them that fame, that thrill. But it was so fascinating to watch how he presented himself in two different lights, that I kind of like the documentaries. I'm not, when I say things I'm against or for, it's never 100%. There's always the 5% where I'm like, okay. Like, for example, I don't like to use the face and names of mass murderers. And recently I did a video and I said, I don't do that. And I put my link to my CNN, the last thing I ever did on mass murders on TV, to CNN, where I refused to talk about that. And they brought me on and forgot to tell the host that I wouldn't be on the show if they did that. And then they tried to claim that they didn't show his face and do the things I said, and they Chironed his name right underneath me. And so they lied. But anyway, the host was in shock because she kept expecting me to talk about things I didn't want to talk about. And that was the last one I ever did. And then I lost a whole bunch of TV because of that. But I decided I didn't want to go on there and glorify these mass murders on major media, because it was like 24-hour a day. Let's talk about this person. Let's just go over and over it and show their face and talk, and the victims get left behind and they get the fame they want. And the next the next mass murderer says, oh, look at that person killed 10 people and got so much fame. I'm going to kill 20 and get more fame. And so I don't like that. So a lot of times when I talk about this, I don't do too many shows on mass murderers. And the few I do, I try to keep away from face and name. But have I ever done that? Yes. With I did talk about the girl who killed in the school. And I simply wanted to show something that from Facebook about when she was growing up and all this stuff. And I did. So, I mean, I would say 95% of the time I don't, but there's always that 5% where I go, because there's something I want to say and I don't know another way to say it. So, because it's important to me. In this case, it's important to me people understand how a psychopath thinks and behaves. So that's why I say that. Clarissa says, so sorry. Same here with the hubby. That last breath in his eyes, I knew he was gone. Yeah, I mean, people do sort of die in different ways, and some ways are more pleasant than others. And watching my sister was just a very difficult thing. And her last breaths was not easy. Let's put it that way. Any other thoughts here? Well, again, I'm not sure that this is true. So one of the things you want to do when you're profiling LLB, because this is an educational channel, is you're saying she made her life all about Paris, putting him on a pedestal. You do not know that. Again, you don't know that. Making him think he was better than others. You do not know that. When the doctor came along, he had to share the limelight. That's true. And he didn't adjust to this. That's true. But the first two, you actually do not know. So when you're profiling, you have to be careful not to editorialize, to say, I know this is what happened, when you do not know that happened. She had a child. What pedestal are we talking about? When I had a child, I paid attention to that child. Most people pay attention to their first child. Put them on a pedestal, what? Because you're a parent who cares and thinks they're wonderful? No, that's a normal parenting thing. That's just normal. The second child comes along that does distract from the first child. That's also a normal process. So I don't know if you're a parent or not, but I'm thinking maybe you're not, because this is just a normal process. And, you know, depending on how many kids you have and what your situation in life is like, all these things can make a difference. For example, I was a third child. I was a third daughter. And I felt left out. Why? Simply because my parents had the two children before. The first child got a lot of attention, and my parents skated and she skated. And so there was that. So they were all into that. And then my next sister came along. She did play the organ, and my mother played the organ. So she got a relative amount of attention, although I think she may have thought she didn't get as much as the first. And I came along, and everything I did, nobody was interested in. so, and sometimes there's a personality issue. I was kind of the weird one that sometimes maybe they felt harder to relate to. And that can be true. You can have a child, you just can't really relate to them. You know, what their interests are. You're like, I can't really get into that. I mean, I took karate. My parents weren't into karate, and they just weren't that interested in hearing about it or seeing it. I bowled, and neither one of them bowled, and so they weren't that interested in that either. So sometimes maybe they should have forced more interest, and therefore maybe feel better. I don't know. You know, we can go back over childhoods and then pick apart the parents for every single damn thing, and it's quite unfair. So, so I just say you have to be very careful not to editorialize. Even if you might have certain feelings about things, but that's the same thing. The same thing with homeschooling. People say, "Oh, I think homeschooling is." So then you editorialize how homeschoolers behave when you don't know how homeschoolers behave. I've heard this with not just that subject. It could be any subject. It could be you took your kids around the world on a sailboat, and people say, well, I don't know why they do that. They took the kids out of school for a year to go on a sailboat, and that they're denying them education, even though they're going to all kinds of foreign countries and learning all kinds of amazing things. Okay, or just anything. I mean, people, maybe they picked up their kids and moved to another country, and the kids had to go to a school in another country and learn the language. Oh, well, they shouldn't have done that. I mean, I tell you, we have to be careful that just because they're not living our lifestyle and doing everything our way, that makes them bad parents or makes them turn their kids into psychos. So I think we just have to be careful. She lived a completely different life than me. I mean, I don't relate to a lot of her life, but at least I can try to be fair, because there's a lot of things I don't know. That to say that she was wrong about everything she did, she made her mistakes. I've made my mistakes, and I'm sure you made your mistakes too. When your kids grow up, they'll tell you that. So I'm going to not continue with that, because again, we're just sitting there trying to pick her apart into pieces, and that's not what the show is about. Okay, I think that's unfair. But anyway, everybody's got their opinion. You can have yours. Anyway, thank you for being here. I think I'll stop with this. They say the whole thing was very fascinating to me, the psychopathy and the trying to recover from the issues. I think you should, these are three great, two excellent documentaries in my opinion, and a great book, just because we'll learn something from all three of them. If you're trying to learn something, that I found them educational, and bringing us a view to actually see this stuff in action, and also to get a viewpoint of somebody who's gone through this whole entire mess. And so, yeah, 3 out of 3 for me, and that's doesn't happen too often. So anyway, I'll put the links below, and yeah. So, but anyway, thank you for being here. And if you're new to the channel and still hanging about, do subscribe to the channel, and you can hit the like button, do all those kind of fun things, and see if anyway. I hope you got something out of this. I certainly found. I'm trying to see. I really wish everything wasn't so small on this thing. It's ridiculous. So. Maybe I need to get a screen that's this big, but I don't want to pay like $5,000. So anyway, thank you guys for being here, and I'll see some of you for the hangout on, I think it's going to be Thursday. Yeah, it is going to be Thursday, because I'm not ready tomorrow. It's going to be on Thursday. So we'll have a hangout on Thursday, and it'll be 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And hope you're all enjoying the snow. I haven't been out since the snow fell. My car's buried, so I'm hoping I'll get out maybe by Thursday or Friday, somewhere around there. Thanks for being here. I really, really appreciate it.